quiet on set had to do with all the deep, dark secrets of Nickelodeon, and a lot of employees saying their experiences that they had were pretty awful. And hey, big shocker right here. Drake Bell comes on to tell his story of how he was, sexually assaulted. And I gotta say, it was some pretty graphic stuff to listen to. And I'll be honest, it just makes me believe that there is a lot of weirdos in the entertainment industry. But I think all of us knew that just based off common sense. And, there's a lot of weird folks out there just in general. But Tebow, all right, old character from iCarly, he interviewed Dan Schneider. All right, super, super interesting to see, especially getting Dan Schneider's thoughts after this documentary came out. We're going to cut straight into it. We're just going to give raw reactions. This is my first time listening to it. It's about 19 minutes. This full video I found on Twitter, X known as. Here it is right now. Let's get it started.
Hey man, I reached out to Dan to see if it was something that he'd be willing to discuss. I'm pleased to say that he said yes. Dan, how are you?
I'm okay. I'm okay.
The fact that I'm just kind of shocked that Dan even wanted to do something like this, because the whole thing was basically about him and how terrible it was working with him.
I really appreciate you reaching out and giving me the opportunity to talk to you about what we saw over the last 2 nights.
I'm really glad you're here because I believe this is important.
For sure.
We've got a lot of things to unpack. But before I dive into my list of topics that I'd like to discuss, is there anything you'd like to start off with?
Absolutely. Watching over the past 2 nights was very difficult. Me facing my past behaviors, some of which are embarrassing and that I regret. And I definitely owe some people.
Yeah, this dude was doing a lot of weird shit, man. Like, when I tell you it was weird, it was like, had people like massaging them, was telling people like some crazy things to do. It made me look at a lot of things differently, because he made a lot of our childhood based off of the shows that we like. Drake and Josh, the Amanda Show, iCarly, Victoria. The list goes on and on. This man put out bangers. We can't take that away from him, but he's a freaking weirdo.
Pretty strong apology.
Let's talk about the massages.
Okay.
Watching the content yesterday.
And he talks about the
disturbing.
It was wrong. It was wrong that I ever put anybody in that position. It was the wrong thing to do. I'd never do it today. I'm embarrassed that I did it then. I apologize to anybody that I ever put in that situation. And even additionally, I apologize to the people who were walking around Video Village or wherever they happened, because there were lots of people there who witnessed it who also may have felt uncomfortable. So I owe them an apology as well.
Yeah. Dan, talk to me about the writer's room. From what I saw, not cool.
No,
yeah.
No, and I don't mean to cut you off, but if I
This right here. Actually, he's gonna say.
can cut right to the chase, let me just say, no writer should ever feel uncomfortable in any writer's room, ever, period, the end, no excuses. Most TV writers, comedy writers have been in writers' rooms, and they are aware that a lot of times there are inappropriate jokes made and inappropriate topics come up. But the fact that I participated in that, especially when I was leading the room, it embarrasses me. I shouldn't have done it. And I can tell you why it
Dan's got a little bit of some shoe game down here. Nice to see that.
hurts really bad for me. I remember very clearly my early experiences, my first experiences in the entertainment business. I was green, I was scared, I was excited. It meant the world to me that I was getting those opportunities. And I went in and I got lucky because they were great. My first couple of experiences were fantastic. And the fact that I didn't pay that forward to every employee that walked through my door, it hurts my heart, because I should have. And I wish I could go back and fix that. In the writer's room, there's no doubt that sometimes those jokes went beyond the pale, and I said things that went too far, or made practical jokes that went too far, and that was wrong. And that was because, I was an inexperienced producer. I was immature. Wouldn't happen today, but
I wouldn't say it's like immature, because this man was doing this in his 40s still, or like late 30s, even with the antics and stuff. So I don't think he could really say anything about immaturity. I mean, mindset wise, but you're a grown ass man and you're talking about telling a girl pretend that you're being sodomized. I mean, dude, that's weird. Come on.
I'm just really sorry it happened.
Yeah. Now, we know you've had a lot of success over 2 decades. Thousands of people have worked with you, for you.
Okay.
Let's speak directly to the people who did not have a good experience with you.
Okay, I would like to speak to those people because I hate that anybody worked for me and didn't have a good time. You know me, you've been on my sets. Look, I've had some employees that have worked for me for 10 years, some more than 20 years, who would work with me again, but not everybody. There's still a significant number that didn't have a great time working for me, so my batting average isn't nearly high enough in that area. And the way they wouldn't get the best of me is that I would let the pressure of doing 40 or even more episodes per year, I would let that pressure get to me, which a good boss should never, ever do.
Was there specific things that you were doing?
Sure, I would snap at people sometimes. I would be snarky when I could have given them a nicer answer. I would not give people the time that they needed. I would be in too big a hurry to get on to the next thing I had to do. And watching that show, it made me, there were so many times I wanted to pick up a phone and call some of those people and say, I'm so sorry and let's talk about it. And I wish you'd had a better time and I wish I could have shown you a better experience.
Yeah.
I like that. It's hard to say, bro, but him being very apologetic about what it is he did, at least he's realizing that what he did was wrong. But at the same time, it's more so like, are we only being apologetic because, you know, it's everybody's word against you and you're just trying to be apologetic so that way people could just back off of you? Or like, are you really being sincere? That's the thing that's sitting in the back of my mind, is like, I don't know if it's sincere or not, but we got plenty of time to think.
Now, you've written hundreds of episodes. Thousands of jokes have been told.
Yeah.
But currently where we are, some people think that some of those jokes are inappropriate for children. What do you think of that?
All these jokes that you're speaking of, that the show covered over the past 2 nights, every one of those jokes was written for a kid audience because kids thought they were funny and only funny, okay? Now we have some adults looking back at them 20 years later through their lens, and they're looking at them and they're saying, oh, you know, I don't think that's appropriate for a kid's show. And I have no problem with that. If that's how anyone feels, let's cut those jokes out of the show. Just like I would have done 20 years ago or 25 years ago. I cut it. I want my shows to be popular. I want everyone to like. The more people who like the shows, the happier I am.
Yeah.
So if there's anything in a show that needs to be cut because it's upsetting somebody, let's cut it.
So I think it's big for you to say, with your work, if it's viewed as that today, you don't have a problem.
Cut it. Cut it.
I mean, that's a solution.
The last thing I want to ever do
Yeah.
is put any content in a show that's going to upset my audience and make them want to turn off the TV. Why would I ever want to do that?
The thing is like, during the time period, nobody was really saying anything. Like, iCarly was the most popular thing, and it's arguably Dan Schneider's best project ever. I mean, we could say, you know, Drake and Josh, the Amanda Show. We can go down the list, but arguably speaking, iCarly is his best thing. But in that time frame, I'll be honest, us kids aren't really looking at it through that type of lens. And I'll be honest, like, I don't even think any of our parents were like, what are you watching that looks very inappropriate? Because it just didn't register at the time. It's like, now that we're adults, it's registering, especially when you're watching a documentary. It's where it points it out. But at the same time, it's like, during that time period, nobody looked at it like that. It's just we're looking further into it now because there's been this whole thing about how Dan's character is on set, how, you know, unfair he is, how much of an asshole he is, basically. That's why we're looking deeper into it. If we found out that Dan was just a nice guy no matter what, to be honest, nobody would be thinking about these jokes and be looking deep into it because Dan is a nice guy. But since Dan is an asshole, we're going to break down every single inappropriate joke there is. And I'll be honest, I'll say the one thing that was very, very weird to look at now, than it was back then is the Ariana Grande thing where she's pouring water on herself. She's doing weird crap in front of the camera. That right there is actually weird. But all the other jokes and stuff like that, nobody really thought of it back in the day. But looking at it now, yeah, it's inappropriate.
That makes sense. I want to give you an opportunity to kind of elaborate on something.
Okay.
The thought process from the series is you had the power to just write a joke, and no matter what, it's going on TV. You just had that type of power. Is that true?
The notion that I had the power to just produce whatever I wanted and have it air is completely false.
Okay.
There were many
don't know about
levels
that.
of scrutiny. Okay? We had executives in LA. We had executives in New York.
So two coasts.
Two coasts
Okay.
of
Both
approval. Yes. And by the way, approval at every stage, really.
Okay.
And I'm talking about wardrobe. I'm talking about makeup, sound, sets, dialogue, jokes, everything.
Now, when you say approval, these obviously that's a hierarchy, not your colleagues or
right.
people in the room. Okay.
No, not my colleague. No, these are my bosses. Bosses, and then their bosses, and then their bosses. And they're approving all of this stuff.
Okay.
Okay? And we're also shooting it in front of all sorts of adults and caregivers and the set teacher and the families. Everybody's watching it. And if anybody had said anything, hey, we don't like that, that's not appropriate, then it would have been cut out.
Now,
So I guess his argument is that since nobody said anything, it was okay. But I don't like he's looking at it from his eyes. So from his eyes, he's like, it's okay because nobody's saying anything. But also, when you have this character of being this type of person, being a very controlling person, or being an a-hole, being unfair, being degrading to people, like they don't want to say anything to you because of how you've always reacted based off of what they're saying. So it's like they don't want to say anything because of your reaction. It's not that they don't have a feeling towards it. Like if there's a feeling towards like an inappropriate joke in there, like they'll feel like it's inappropriate. But the way that you react, since you're their boss, they feel scared to say something. Because I mean, in the documentary, they were saying he'll make them not work for Hollywood again. They'll lose their job, stuff like that. So it's like, why would I want to combat with the person who can make me not have a job anymore?
to push back a little bit
Sure.
because the series painted you in this way that you were just the guy that was doing what he wanted, and people were afraid to confront you.
Okay,
about
so
things.
Tebow's talking
say-
about it.
Just humor me. Say that was the case. What would have been the ultimate way to?
Okay. If nobody on the set, if all of the dozens and dozens of adults that were on the set, if they didn't say anything, if my bosses said, if they insisted, you've got to make a change here, you got to cut that, I had to do it. I had no choice.
Got it. Now this next one, it kind of hit close to home. Being a new father, I wouldn't be opposed to my child being in the entertainment industry. Doesn't matter what age. Yeah. Seeing some of those on-air dares, seeing it now from where you are now in your life, what do you think of that?
I think that some of the on-air dares went too far. I think they pushed the envelope too far. Not all of them, not most of them, but some did. Nickelodeon wanted to do their version of Fear Factor. At the time we were shooting All That, so I was tasked with doing these on-air dares with the All That cast. So we get with the writers and we come up with all these ideas, and it's hard to do because we don't have the budget of Fear Factor, and we can't put the kids in dangerous situations like the adults are put in. So
Kids.
it was hard to come up with stuff. But we would come up with all these ideas of dares they could do. We would give them to the network, and they would say, tell us the ones that were okay.
Right.
Those are the ones we shot. Those are the ones that aired. At the time, I had no indication that any kid ever had a problem with them. But when I was watching the show over the past 2 nights, I now know that there were kids who did have problems with the on-air dares. And it breaks my heart. And I'm so sorry. I am so sorry to any kid.
Yeah, there was the one guy, he had spoke out about it, and he was getting peanut butter licked off him by a bunch of dogs. All right. Now, I don't remember watching that Fear Factor show or a Fear Factor-esque type show on Nickelodeon. So I didn't remember that. So I can't give you what I thought back in the day based off what I am as an adult now. But looking at it through that lens, Yeah, that is pretty weird having yourself being covered in peanut butter and then the dogs licking it off of you. I didn't really find that humoring and I thought it was weird. But there was a bunch of other stuff, like little snippets of all these other things that they were doing in the show, and it was still a little bit off putting. And from an adult perspective, it doesn't look like it would be okay to put a child in that type of situation.
Kid who ever had to do a dare or anything that they didn't want to do or weren't comfortable doing. We went out of our way to make sure they were safe and that everything was done properly, but if a kid was scared and didn't want to do it, kids shouldn't have had to do it.
Yeah.
Period, the end.
Right.
And if I had known at the time, I would have changed it on the spot.
Now, we also saw the series highlight two former writers' viewers, two women, who spoke about a wage discrepancy. Now, I know that you don't divvy out salaries. Talk to me about that part.
Well, you're correct. I have nothing to do with paying writers. I never have. I've never made a writer's deal. And of all the writers I've been in a writer's room with, I never even knew how much most of them were getting paid.
Yeah, but we saw these two women who were writers for you sharing one salary. How does that happen?
It's very simple. There's a common practice in television when hiring writers. If you have a spot for a new writer, sometimes you'll go to two writers and say, hey, if you two new writers for your first job are willing to share a salary, you can both have the job. They have the opportunity to say, yes, that sounds good, or no, no thank you. In this case, it was two women writers. I've done another show where that teaming was done with two male writers, and they split a salary. I did another show where it was a male and a female writer, and they split a salary. So
And these are all first-time writers.
all first-time writers looking for their first gig.
Got it. Now, in the series,
Okay, so that wasn't explained.
they also highlighted two black actors who said that they felt overlooked. Now, I want to be clear. I'm never going to speak on anyone else's journey. Yeah? I can talk about my experience, how my experience was with you, what I saw prior to working with you. But again, I don't want to speak on anyone's journey. I saw you be honored for diversity in your work.
Yes, and the reason for that is diversity has always been very important to me in my shows. If you go back to the very first Nickelodeon show I ever made, that's very evident, as it is in the second one, and then the first movie I ever made for Nickelodeon, which starred Kenan and Kel, and every show I did after that had a lead black actor in it. I'm very proud of that. It's very important to me. And not only am I proud that they were in my shows, I'm exceptionally proud of the achievements they've had beyond my shows, and they've gone on to bigger and better things, and that gives me a great sense of pride.
Well, something that really kind of bothered me was how they depicted your relationship with the cast.
Yeah, it bothered me too.
Yeah, just me being there, I knew the dynamic was trust. I understood that in situations where they may have had turmoil, whether it be with their families, whether it be other castmates, they came to you. Versus how they made you look. With that said, Amanda Bynes was brought up in the series and her emancipation and how you were involved in that. Can you talk to us about it a bit?
Sure. Amanda was between the ages of 16 and 17, and she wanted...
Yeah, I heard this man was like on her crazy, just looking like being a part of basically her entire journey to stardom. And shoot, that was crazy right there.
wanted to get emancipated from her parents, which was a fairly common thing with successful young actors, at least at the time.
Sure.
And she wanted that for herself. So she turned to her team, which included her lawyer, her agent, her manager, her publicist, me, because she included me as part of her team, thought of me that way. We supported her.
Oh, she included
She tried to get emancipated. It ended up not working out. She didn't.
Well, since we're here, let's stay here for a moment. There was also an incident where she had ran away from home, if
Yes.
you would. Can you talk to us a little bit just to clear the air of exactly what happened in that situation?
Yes. One night, it was very late, well after midnight, 1 or 2 in the morning. Phone rang. I answered. It was Amanda. She was upset. She was in distress. She had had some conflict with her parents, I think her father, and she called me. I was immediately concerned about her safety. I called someone who I knew was fairly nearby. That person was able to go and pick her up. Then I knew she was safe. I felt better. She ended up being taken to the police.
Well, regardless of what some people may think, I think it's only positive that you are there for people when they need you. That said, let's talk about some of the things that have just been swirling forever.
Okay.
You were banned from your set.
Never happened. That is a false rumor.
What happened?
Add it to the list of false rumors.
Talk to me. What happened?
Banned from his set. I
They
did
were
hear about that.
Adult actresses at the time, and they had their own specific reasons for not wanting to do the show anymore. I'm not judging that. It got tense, and what they don't know, maybe, is I did everything I could to make that show go away. My producer partner at the time, we would call and say, this is not a good situation.
Okay.
So I decided I'm going to do what most showrunners do, which is you're not on the set. There's a director there to shoot it. I'll go up to the writer's room. I'll work on the next script. But
Yeah.
because everybody was so used to me caring about every detail of every show so
Yeah.
much, for me not to be on the set, yeah, maybe some people thought I got banned.
So it was more of an assumption because this guy's usually here and now he's not.
I don't know if it was an assumption. I don't know if somebody thought they were making me look bad by saying I got banned from the set. I have no idea.
Okay.
All I know is I was never banned from the set.
Yep. The darkest part of this series
Okay.
discuss child predators. Now, I want to make sure that we clear a couple of things up.
Okay?
Brian Peck was not hired by you.
No, I did not hire Brian Peck.
This was a
Bro, that Brian Peck situation, like, oh my gosh, it is so disturbing. Just the child predator situation where it discussed like 3 child predators that were a part of the Nickelodeon team. Man, like that was some graphic stuff to listen to, and to know that that was kind of going on behind the scenes, it just really kind of creeps you out. And having this whole documentary, basically kind of makes me look at these shows a little bit different because you know what was going on behind the scenes, or at least what you were told based off of the documentary and based off of what these 2 individuals are having in this conversation. It makes you look at Nickelodeon shows a whole lot differently.
Poland Robbins production.
Yeah. And when Drake and I talked and he told me what had happened, I was more devastated by that than anything that ever happened to me in my career thus far. And I told him, I'm here for you. What do you need? Which Drake mentioned in the show that we watched last night. And next, I heard that he went to court when this guy was being tried, Peck. And when Drake walked in, he saw 50 people sitting on the side of the courtroom supporting Peck.
Yeah,
A lot of them pretty famous.
crazy.
Of course, Drake was devastated that happened. And even more disappointing, 41 of those people wrote letters for Peck, character letters, praising him for who he was and asking for leniency. And they knew that he was guilty. They knew he had confessed to some degree. And they still did this.
Yeah, that was wild because I think there was a journalist that was on there in the documentary saying that there was a petition to undisclose the names of these people that wrote the letters. And a lot of them were some actors that we've seen on the big screen. So that's wild.
That's baffling that adults would do that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if people know this, but Drake's mom, a lovely woman who I stay in contact with this day, she came to me at the time and she said, Dan, I'm not good with words like you are. And would you help me with my speech for the judge? And I said, of course. And I did. And he ended up going to prison and serving his time. And yeah, that was probably the darkest part of my career. And here's the kicker that I really don't get. After he got out of prison and was, to my knowledge, a registered sex offender, he was hired on a Disney Channel show.
Yeah, he was hired on The Sweet Life. That was wild. I didn't even know that was a thing. I mean, obviously, because I was a kid back then. I'm not looking at the news like, oh, who did Disney hire? But it's like knowing that he went from one children's network to another children's network after being a registered sex offender. It's like Why did he just go from one multi-billion-dollar corporation to the next? And it's not even that he went to another network show that was on a smaller scale. He went to Disney. That's crazy.
I don't understand that. I never, I don't understand.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that, man. Are you okay? You want to take a minute?
Yeah, I might. Let's keep going.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. I think we really unpacked some important things. We set the record straight on a lot of things. Before I let you get out of here, I appreciate the vulnerability that you use in knowing that there's definitely things that you would have and should have done differently. Is there anything that we haven't discussed? Anything that if you could go back and navigate the journey differently, what would that look like?
Yeah, there's definitely things that I would do differently. One that I think would be really, really important is when you're hiring young actors, minors, to work in television, I would suggest that we have a licensed therapist there to oversee that process for the specific reason of making sure that those kids really wanted to do this job, that they really wanted to be on television. Maybe they should even be informed about what that means. What's it going to mean if you're famous? What's that going to mean on social media? What's it going to mean within your family? Let them find out. And
Yeah,
that
that's a
way,
good thing to say.
If a kid doesn't want to be on a TV show, they can opt out. That psychologist, that therapist could come to us and say, this kid doesn't want to do it, or their parents aren't understanding of what's going to come. And then we could avoid the mistake of ever putting a kid in a TV show that didn't want to be there.
Yeah,
and additionally,
that's valid.
The main thing that I would change is how I treat people and everyone. I definitely at times didn't give people the best of me. I didn't show enough patience. I could be cocky and definitely overambitious, and sometimes just straight up rude and obnoxious, and I am so sorry that I ever was. And when I watched the show, I could see the hurt in some people's eyes, and it made me feel awful and regretful and sorry. I wish I could go back, especially to those earlier years of my career, and bring the growth and the experience that I have now and just do a better job and never, ever feel like it was okay to be an asshole to anyone ever.
Yeah, man, because
I wanted to make funny TV shows for kids, and we definitely did that. But if I could go back,
you can't be an asshole the
I would
whole
get it
time.
done in different ways. I'd just be nicer as often as possible and listen more to the people on my team. And I would do everything that I could to make sure that everyone had a good experience. That's what I do differently.
Dan, I appreciate your time.
I appreciate you.
Thanks for stopping by, man.
Thank you.
Man, this is what I'll say. All right, just to kind of give my opinion. And I'm pretty sure everybody wanted to know Dan's thoughts on everything, on all the stuff that was being said about him in this 4-episode, 2-part series that we saw. I definitely wanted to know Dan's input on some of these things and, his point of view on where he was coming from, just to get like a better understanding. And I'm pretty sure all of us wanted to at least know what Dan was going to say. But I'm glad I heard what he needed to say. Am I agreeing to 100% of everything that he did say? Not necessarily. There's two sides of the story, and now we have Dan's side of the story. I do kind of wish the interview was a little bit longer, but then I guess Tebow really kind of hit everything we needed to discuss on, as far as like the women having the issue with the salary and how they were treated in the writer's room, the Brian Peck situation, also how he treated people, the massaging and stuff like that. Those were like main big things that were in the show, and Tebow really did talk about it, or at least asked the question of like, what was your deal, basically. Just leave a comment down below on your honest thoughts about this whole entire thing. And thank you guys for watching. Leave a like on this video. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Thank you.